Japan. The land of order, the place where the trains apologize if they're 10 seconds late, where people line up to line up, and where food gets treated like a Zen religion that the entire Western world signs up for without understanding a single thing about it. You've seen it. You think Japanese food is balance, harmony, respect, some silent old master slicing fish while a singing bowl hums in the background. Well, I hate to break it to you before you finish your edamame, but Japanese cuisine is a war. An extremely polite war, back straight, bow included, but a war. Because in Japan, nobody agrees on anything that has to do with eating, and everybody, and I mean everybody, is dead certain that their version is the only correct one and yours is an insult to their ancestors. So buckle up, because no amount of Zen is going to fix this one. And let's start with the obvious. The thing you think you've already mastered, sushi. You think sushi is raw fish. Wrong already. Sushi is rice, vinegared rice, and the fish is the sidekick, a detail that makes half the planet's head explode. Real sushi, nigiri, was born in Tokyo back when it was still called Edo, as street corner fast food, the equivalent of grabbing a sandwich on your way to work, which is why it's called edome, in front of Edo, because the fish came straight out of that bay. So that temple of silence you picture in your head was originally a food stall for workers in a hurry. And here's where the fight starts, because the world of sushi has more unwritten rules than a members-only club. Don't dip the rice in the soy sauce, you dip the fish, and if you dip the rice, the atame is judging you even while he smiles. He's already put exactly as much wasabi as it needs, so when you grab your little green mountain and stir it into the soy sauce like it's a mug of hot cocoa, somewhere in Japan a man dies a little inside. And don't even get me started on the California roll, that American invention with avocado and the rice on the outside that a purist looks at the way you'd look at pineapple on a pizza. They don't recognize it as theirs, but they'll happily sell it to the tourist, which is the most elegant way there is to look down on you, by charging you for it. And while we're on the subject of things you've believed were Japanese your whole life that turn out to have arrived by boat, let me ruin another one for you. Tempura, that impossibly thin, crispy batter, the peak of Japanese technique, is Portuguese, I swear. Portuguese missionaries brought it over in the 16th century, frying vegetables during ember days, the meatless fasting days, and that's literally where the word comes from. The Japanese took one look, said, interesting, and over 4 centuries perfected it to a level that left Portugal scratching its head wondering what just happened. It's the most humiliating cultural trade in history. You hand me a half-baked idea, and I hand it back to you as fine art. Thanks, come again. And this is a pattern, because Japanese cuisine has spent centuries doing exactly this, taking something from abroad, never quite admitting it's from abroad, and then doing it better than anyone alive. Now, case number 2 of the same crime, ramen. Yes, ramen, the dish you associate with Japan the way you associate sumo or Mount Fuji. It's Chinese. The whole thing started with Chinese noodles that came in through the port of Yokohama, and for a long time it was literally called China Soba, China noodles, until that got awkward and it quietly became ramen. And once the Japanese adopted it, they did what they always do, turned it into a regional battlefield where every area swears its broth is the real one and everybody else is a heretic. There's Sapporo ramen up north, loaded with miso, thick and heavy, built to survive winter. There's Hakata, down in Fukuoka, with that tonkatsu broth boiled from pork bones for hours until it goes white and cloudy like milk, so intense it sticks to your lips. There's Tokyo shoyu, soy-based, cleaner and more elegant. There's kitakata, and every city will tell you, with a smile, that all the others are serving dirty water. A Japanese person will hop on a bullet train, cross half the country, and stand in line for 2 hours in the rain for a bowl of noodles that costs about the same as a coffee, because that specific bowl, from that specific shop, is the one. And here's the best part, you eat ramen loudly. Slurping hard, making a racket, because slurping cools the noodle and lifts the flavor. And that noise your mother raised you to treat as the mark of a bad person is, over here, a compliment to the chef. Chew on that next time you get told to keep it down at the table. And as if ramen weren't already enough of a mess, it turns out the same country that lines up for 2 hours for an artisan bowl is also the one that gave the world instant ramen, the packet stuff, invented right here by a guy who wanted to feed a broke post-war country cheaply and ended up birthing the cup of noodles that has kept every college student on the planet alive. The Japanese have voted it, in serious polls, one of their greatest inventions of the 20th century, ahead of things with a whole lot more prestige. So the same culture that treats good ramen like a work of art also worships vending machine ramen without seeing any contradiction. And there isn't one, because over here both things are true at the same time, like pretty much everything in this country. And since we're deep in the came from China and stayed for good category, let's talk gyoza, dumplings. Also Chinese, the jiaozi, but the Japanese made them thinner-skinned, crispier on the bottom, tighter sealed, and then of course started their own civil war over them. Utsunomiya and Hamamatsu, two entire cities, have spent decades fighting over which one is the gyoza capital of Japan, with consumption per resident statistics, rival festivals, and a wildly disproportionate amount of pride over a dumpling. Two whole cities measuring their dignity in dumplings per capita, and you were worried about your problems. But if you want the definitive example of this cannot possibly be Japanese and yet they'll defend it to the death, here it is. Curry. Japanese curry, kare reisu, that thick Swedish brown sauce eaten over rice that in Japan is mom food, cafeteria food, Sunday food. It didn't come straight from India. It came from the British, the English, who had already taken curry from India and turned it into a sauce of their own, passed it to the Japanese Navy in the Meiji era, and the military adopted it because it was cheap, filling, and easy to cook in a giant pot. So one of the most beloved everyday dishes in Japan is, at its core, an Indian dish run through the British colonial filter and picked up by the Imperial Navy. 3 empires stuffed into one bowl of rice. And the average Japanese person could not care less, because to them curry is as much theirs as breathing. And if you tell them it's Indian, they'll give you the same look of polite disbelief a Texan gives you when you suggest barbecue was invented somewhere else. Technically, you're right. Emotionally, you just insulted their grandmother. Okay, breathe. Let's move to something that is Japanese top to bottom and happens to hide the funniest food war in the whole archipelago. Okonomiyaki, roughly translated as whatever you want grilled. A kind of thick pancake of flour, egg, and cabbage with whatever you feel like on top, crowned with that brown sauce, a mayo zigzag, and bonito flakes that wave around in the heat like they're alive because they literally look like they're breathing. Beautiful, delicious, and the cause of a regional blood feud because there are 2 schools and they hate each other. There's Osaka okonomiyaki, Kansai style, where you mix all the ingredients in the bowl and pour it onto the griddle, all together, democratic. And there's Hiroshima, which gets built in layers, thin batter on the bottom, a mountain of cabbage on top, yakisoba noodles, egg, stacked up with the patience of an architect. A guy from Hiroshima will tell you the Osaka one is a shapeless amateur blob. A guy from Osaka will tell you the Hiroshima one is just a pile of stuff with no plan. And if you, innocent tourist, walk into a Hiroshima spot and order Osaka style, you'd better have your flight home booked. And since we're already in Osaka with the griddle hot, it's impossible not to fall into takoyaki, those little balls of batter with a piece of octopus inside, made on a griddle full of half-sphere holes that the vendor keeps flipping with 2 picks at magician speed. Osaka is street food city, the place that literally defines itself by kuidare, which roughly means eat yourself broke, blowing your last shirt on food, an entire civic motto invented to justify never stopping. Takoyaki come with their own, unwritten absurd rule, which is that they arrive fresh at the temperature of the sun's core. They look harmless on the outside and are molten lava on the inside. Every single Japanese person knows the first takoyaki is going to torch the roof of their mouth, knows it, has always known it, and bites into it whole anyway, like this time is going to be different. It is never different. And speaking of neighborhood turf wars, there's one that splits the entire country over a simple question of noodle, udon versus soba. Udon is the thick, white, soft, tender wheat noodle, and its spiritual capital is Kagawa, the prefecture that makes Sanuki udon and takes it so seriously it straight up rebranded itself the Udon Prefecture, with zero shame. Soba is thin, dark, made of buckwheat, with a rustic little edge, and it's more of a Tokyo and mountain country thing, from the places where regular wheat wouldn't grow. The soba fan thinks he's more refined, more of an educated palate. The udon guy will tell you soba is for people who think a little too highly of themselves, and both of them share the same noise ritual as ramen. You slurp them with a racket, especially soba, where the louder you go, the more respect you show the chef. An entire country where good table manners consist, precisely, of the exact noise you were forbidden to make. Hey, and while I've got you sitting here with your mouth full, let me ask you one thing. No pressure, real casual. If you're enjoying this, hit like and subscribe. I'm dropping it now, right in the middle of the meal, with the same breeziness a Japanese person uses to announce that he loves natto, knowing full well half the table is about to make a face. You hit the button, and we keep going, because we've still got half of Japan left to argue about. And before we get into the real stuff, we have to talk about what holds this whole cuisine up from underneath, the invisible foundation, dashi. That base broth of kombu seaweed and dried, bonito katsuobushi, which is literally fish dehydrated until it's hard as a rock, so hard you shave it into paper-thin flakes with something that looks like a carpenter's plane. Out of that broth comes the famous umami, the fifth taste, discovered and named by a Japanese scientist and something the rest of the world took a century to take seriously. And on top of that dashi you build miso soup, the one they set in front of you everywhere and you drink without thinking. Mistake, because not even the miso escapes the war. Up in the Northeast, in places like Sendai, they want it red, dark, salty, strong, aged longer. In Kyoto and the West they prefer it white, sweet, mellow, the saikyo. And some people blend the two, which, depending on which side you're on, is either common sense or treason. A soup that looks like the humblest, most neutral thing on the table and is actually a political map of the entire country served in a tiny little bowl. Because, look, speaking of things that divide people, let's bring out the weapon of mass destruction of the Japanese table, natto. Fermented soybeans, little brown sticky beans coated in a slimy goo that strings up when you lift it, with a smell of gym socks and ammonia that walks into the room before you do. And here it's not a regional war, here it's a civil war inside the country itself. Over in Kanto, around Tokyo, they adore it. They eat it for breakfast over hot rice without blinking. Over in Kansai, around Osaka and Kyoto, they've historically looked at it the way you'd look at that exact same thing, with suspicion and a strong urge to open a window. It's the dish that splits the Japanese into two irreconcilable camps. The one no foreigner ever orders twice by accident, and the one grandparents themselves use to test the new son-in-law. Hold your natto without flinching and your family. Flinch, and you'll forever be the one who couldn't handle the beans. And from things that smell strong, we go to things that can literally kill you, because Japan has dishes that in any other country would be banned on common sense alone. First up, fugu, the pufferfish. That fish that carries inside it a toxin that paralyzes and kills, with no antidote, and gets served in restaurants anyway because there are chefs with an official license who have studied for years to know exactly which part to cut out and which part to leave. Eating fugu is paying a fortune to sit down and play Russian roulette with chopsticks, trusting blindly that the guy in the kitchen did his homework. It's sliced so thin you can see the plate through it, more for the show than anything. And the macabre little thrill, they say, is that faint tingle on your lips. A country where fine dining includes the remote possibility of not making it to dessert. And from a dangerous fish to a fish that started an East versus West war of technique. Unagi, the eel. It's grilled, lacquered with a sweet soy glaze, served over rice, and it's a summer delicacy, because there's one specific day on the calendar when you're supposed to eat eel to survive the heat. And on that day the lines wrap around the block. But here comes the fine print feud. Over in Kanto, in Tokyo, the eel is cut open along the back. In Kansai, in Osaka, it's cut open along the belly. And this isn't a whim, it's got a textbook, very Japanese explanation. In Tokyo, a samurai city, cutting open the belly hit too close to seppuku, to harakiri. So out of respect and superstition they cut along the back. In Osaka, a merchant city, they cut along the belly because talking with your heart out front was good for business. Two ways of slicing an eel that sum up the mindset of two entire cities. Only Japan turns where you slit a critter open into a declaration of identity. And since we're on luxury and expensive things, we have to talk about Wagyu, and above all about the biggest food scam being pulled in your city right now, Kobe beef. Wagyu is the Japanese beef with that infiltrated fat that draws marble inside the muscle and melts at mouth temperature. And Kobe is just one variety, from Hyogo Prefecture, with insanely strict rules about which animal is even allowed to be called that. But it turns out Kobe is also a rival of Matsusaka and Omi, two other legendary beefs that have spent centuries arguing over which one is the queen of Japan. And while they fight it out elegantly over there, out here any restaurant on earth slaps Kobe beef on the menu with criminal cheer, when the actual export of real Kobe is tiny and controlled to the gram. So that Kobe burger you were so proud of has about as much Kobe in it as a fortune cookie has to do with China. Welcome to the club of the classily scammed. And if the Wagyu already emptied your wallet, brace yourself for the summit of elegant spending. Keiseki, Japanese hot cuisine, that procession of tiny seasonal plates arranged with the precision of a jeweler, where the dish the food sits, on matters as much as the food, and where the season rules over everything, because serving something out of its season is practically an aesthetic crime. And its cousin at the sushi counter is omakase, which means I leave it in your hands, meaning you sit down, you shut up, and the master decides what you eat and in what order, piece by piece, no menu, and often no price in sight, because asking how much it costs already outs you as someone who shouldn't be there. You trust, you eat what you're handed, you say thank you, and at the end you pay a number you'd rather not look at too long. It's the only place on earth where handing yourself over completely and having no idea what's about to happen is considered the premium experience. And let's come back down to earth, to everyday food, because not all of Japan is $1,000 beef and poison fish. There's tonkatsu, the breaded fried pork cutlet, crispy with its thick sauce and its mountain of raw shredded cabbage on the side, and its Osaka street cousin, kushikatsu, skewers of everything battered and fried that you dip in a communal sauce. And there lies the one law that actually matters: no double dipping. Double dipping is forbidden. That sauce belongs to everyone. Half the bar shares it, and if you stick your already bitten skewer back into the communal pot, you've committed a social sin that in Osaka is punished with the coldest stare on the planet. A people that built an entire rule of hygiene and honor around a shared tub of sauce. Absolute respect. And then there's yakitori, the charcoal grilled chicken skewers, which sounds simple until you find out that over here, nothing on the bird gets thrown away. They grill the breast, sure, but also the thigh, the skin, the cartilage, the liver, the heart, the gizzard, and parts of the chicken you didn't even know had names. Each skewer is a different part, and the person who knows orders exactly the one he wants, with the confidence of someone who knows the animal's anatomy better than his own doctor. It comes with beer and that after-work izakaya vibe under the train tracks, the smoke stuck to the ceiling. It's the Japan that doesn't make the brochures, the after-hours one, and probably the most honest of them all. And at the opposite end of simplicity, the onigiri, the ball of rice with a filling inside and a strip of seaweed on the outside, the pocket food, the school food, the train food, the konbini food, those convenience stores that in Japan are a food temple disguised as a gas station. And even the humble onigiri has its engineering obsession. The plastic wrapper is designed in 3 layers so the seaweed stays separated from the rice until the exact second you open it, so it crunches instead of going soggy. A country capable of dedicating patents and decades of R&D to keeping a strip of seaweed from going limp too early. And then people say they're the ones who overdo it. And since the konbini came up, we have to pay tribute, because the Japanese convenience store is a phenomenon that breaks any Westerner's brain. You walk in at 3 in the morning and walk out with a freshly restocked onigiri, a fluffy egg sandwich that has its own cult following, hot fried chicken, a decent coffee, and 30 other things that in your country would be sad gas station fare, and here are a legitimate meal. And in that universe reigns a product Japan has turned into a collector's religion, the Kit Kat. Because the name sounds close to a Japanese phrase that roughly means you'll definitely win. It gets given as a good luck charm before an exam, and it exists in hundreds of impossible regional flavors: matcha, sake, purple sweet potato, wasabi, Hokkaido melon. Every area shows off its own, so even a British chocolate bar ended up caught in the Japanese machine that turns absolutely everything into local identity. Nobody escapes, not even the Kit Kat. And in the same family of portable food is the bento, the lunchbox, which in Japan is not dumping leftovers into Tupperware, but an art of composition where every compartment has its thing. The colors are balanced on purpose, and there are moms who wake up early to sculpt the rice into cartoon characters so the kid doesn't get embarrassed at school. And its traveling version, the ekiben, the train station bento, is a full-blown national competition because every major station brags about its ekiben made with local products. And there are people who plan the bullet train trip around which lunchbox they sell on which platform. You board the Shinkansen, you sit down, you open your regional box with the ceremony of someone unwrapping a gift, and you eat your slice of that province's identity at 120 miles an hour. Only in Japan does the train's takeout food have rankings, seasons, and a fan club. Let me stop for a second on something delicate, because it's not all a joke. Mochi, that glutinous rice cake pounded with heavy mallets in a huge mortar in a New Year ceremony where one person hammers and another reaches their hand in between blows with a confidence that freezes your blood. Mochi is so dense and sticky that every New Year the Japanese authorities put out real warnings, actual campaigns, about the risk of choking, especially among the elderly. And every January the news comes around again. It's not a punchline, it's a genuine public health advisory. And even so, mochi stays at the center of the table every 1st of January, because tradition outweighs caution, and because for a lot of grandparents, New Year without mochi isn't New Year. There's the whole of Japan in a single bite. The beauty, the ritual, and the sheer stubbornness of doing something exactly the way it was done 1,000 years ago. And to bring the heart rate down, matcha and tea, which in Japan is not grabbing a tea, but an entire ceremony with centuries of codification, where how you turn the bowl, in which direction, and how many times, matters more than the tea itself. A whole ritual, silent, millimeter precise, over a bitter green drink that to half the world, the first time, tastes like fresh-cut lawn. But that green has conquered the planet as ice cream, as cake, as 2,000 other things, and today you sip a matcha latte in your city with no idea that behind it lies a 400-year liturgy that doesn't forgive a single wrong flick of the wrist. And, like any good long meal, this one also reaches the point where you've covered the big dishes and start firing off names at full speed before the coffee goes cold. So let's give an honest run through to the ones still banging on the door. Sukiyaki and shabu shabu, those communal pots in the middle of the table where everyone cooks their own meat and vegetables and quietly argues over who dumped in too much cabbage. Tamagoyaki, the sweet omelet rolled layer over layer with infinite patience, which serves as a one-bite test of whether a sushi chef is worth anything. The yakisoba from festival stalls, with its sauce and its smell that kidnaps you 3 streets away. Tempura poking out again on every corner as if we hadn't already caught it red-handed in its Portuguese crime. Dango, those little mochi balls on a skewer. Taiyaki, the fish-shaped pastry filled with sweet bean paste, which throws every Westerner off because the dessert tastes like legume and is somehow amazing. And sake, Nihonshu, which is neither a hard liquor nor even called plain sake by a Japanese person, and which has its own geography of rivalries between regions of water and rice, because of course it does. And, well, that's how you eat it. A country the whole world admires for its harmony and its balance, and that, on the inside, is a permanent argument about where you slice an eel open, which side you're on with natto, and whether real okonomiyaki is the Osaka one or the Hiroshima one, knowing perfectly well that almost all of it started out as poor people's food for workers in a hurry and for ship's galleys, and defended today anyway, with the solemnity of a national treasure. The trains will apologize for 10 seconds of delay, but nobody backs down an inch on the right recipe. If all this fighting left you hungry, you know the drill. Hit like and subscribe, because at the next long meal we're going to argue about a whole other country. Enjoy.